Hello and welcome to Market Madness, the podcast from GiveMeSport, where every day is like deadline day. I'm Olivia Buzaglo, and alongside me is GiveMeSport senior football correspondent Ben Jacobs. And we're back for the first time in 2026. Back with a new little jingle, is it?
Yeah, bit of new music, new Christmas jumper for me, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Yes, Happy New Year to everyone. We're going to be live each week during January on a Thursday at 11 o'clock. So make sure you're there. Right, today we're going to be looking at the managerial changes at Manchester United and Chelsea and how they affect their plans for the January window. And who better to ask about Chelsea's new head coach, Liam Rosenior, than his dad, Leroy Rosenior, who's going to join us in just a few minutes. And we're joined by transfer guru Fabrizio Romano to talk all about the latest dealings in the market. A reminder, of course, that you can get involved too. Make sure to leave your questions for Ben wherever you are watching. Currently live on Facebook, YouTube and X. And if you're watching or listening back in the future, then do make sure you're following us on @GiveMeSport so you can see when the live shows are taking place and get up to the minute news as it happens. For more info on any of the stories discussed today, you can head over to GiveMeSport's website and make sure you're following us across all socials as well. Right, let's get into it, shall we? This is Market Madness from GiveMeSport. So we're back. Ben, this is a very special occasion actually today because we're celebrating the 1 year anniversary of Market Madness.
Yeah, we are.
We're a year old
already.
I know. It's flown by, isn't it? Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it, Ben?
I think we need a little cake. We need to get Fabrizio Romano to pop some champagne.
Well, next time for the 2 year anniversary, we'll be prepared and we'll get Fabrizio to do that. Before we actually dive in with the main man himself, Antoine Semenyo, Ben. I mean, it couldn't have been any more fitting, could it? A 95th minute winner. His last kick for Bournemouth against Spurs was a winning goal. Is that the best parting gift that he could have possibly given the Cherries?
Yeah, absolutely. And on his birthday, let's not forget as well. So his birthday and Market Madness's birthday are pretty much the same time. So Semenyo now will join Manchester City. That's the big news. Bournemouth negotiated not just the finances, but a ability to use him in that game against Tottenham, against Arsenal, and also versus Chelsea as well. And they got 4 points from those three really difficult games. And as you say, he scored an injury time winner. So it was a fairy tale ending. And all credit to Semenyo as well, because that shows the character and the professionalism. There's plenty of players that maybe would have said, we don't want to risk an injury, especially in a World Cup year. We want to go as soon as possible. But Semenyo, quite the opposite. He really wanted to leave Bournemouth on the best possible terms. And that's basically the cherry on the top of the cake, getting that winner against Tottenham. And then as far as the deal is concerned, we heard some suggestions from Jamie Redknapp on Sky Sports that there might be a twist and Liverpool could enter the race. Never been my understanding. Liverpool have not tried a hijack. And now we know he's off to Man City. So the news, as of about an hour ago, Semenyo's landed in Manchester. He's undergoing his medical. Interestingly, the deal is not the £65 million clause. It's slightly under. It's a £64 million package, 62.5 million up front, 1.5 million in add-ons. And that 62.5 up front is more than the fixed fee of the original release clause, which was due to expire on the 10th of January. That was only 60 million. So what Man City have done is they've paid a little bit more, but they've got more preferable terms. And as I revealed a few days ago, Man City are going to pay over 2 years. The 60 plus 5 release clause was one lump sum up front for the 60 million part. So this is a deal that suits all parties, a clear run in the end for Manchester City, and Semenyo will sign a 5.5-year contract. And let's not forget as well, he is now Bournemouth's record sale.
Yeah, I mean, everything last night, I think it was just meant to be, wasn't it? And I think, like you said, Ben, a lot of players maybe wouldn't have played in the last couple of games, but just shows what a great servant he was. And he deserves this move to Manchester. Yeah. He deserves.
Can I just say as well, Liv, before we go to Fabrizio, what a bonkers night of Premier League football. And if anyone's listening, tell us what team you were watching. I was covering the Everton game. They were down to 9 men and Pickford made a world-class save So as a result, Wolves didn't win that game. There was Harvey Barnes, ex-my team Leicester, in a 4-3 Premier League classic. There was the Semenyo fairy tale. Man City dropping points. Chelsea, obviously, your team losing at Fulham. I can't think of a crazier single night of Premier League football in quite some time.
Yeah, I completely agree. Although I was up at very early this morning for another job, so I had to be in bed very early. So I only watched the first half of the Chelsea game and had to go to bed. I woke up at like midnight and I was like, what on earth has gone on here? But anyway, it was a wild night, and we might get into that some of that a little bit later. Manchester United obviously drawing at Burnley. But okay, we obviously normally kick things off, if you listen to Market Madness, by putting Ben on the spot with a question he has to answer by the end of the show. But we're going to leave him hanging just for a few more minutes, because Fabrizio Romano was the first guest we ever got on Market Madness. We started big, guys. We started big. So it only seems right to kick off the January 2026 series by getting him on again. And he's been speaking to GiveMeSport's Sam Cohen.
We'll get straight into it because there is a lot to cover. Let's start with Mark Gahey, who's on Manchester City's radar. How realistic do you think is a January move, and what sort of price would Crystal Palace be looking at if they were to sell mid-season?
Look, I think it's possible. A January move is possible. It depends completely on the player. It's the player who has to decide, because Palace are open to make this deal happen. Palace know that the player will leave on a free in the summer, and so they're prepared to take the money in this January window if the player decides to agree. At the moment, still nothing agreed, from what I'm told, between Manchester City and Mark Gahey, his agents, and also Crystal Palace. So there is still no formal price. There is still no formal conversation club to club. Man City first want to understand if Mark Gahey wants to make a move in January or not. So there will be more talks between player and club in the upcoming days to understand what Mark Gahey wants to do. Don't forget that for the summer, there are already several clubs interested, because for sure Liverpool are still there, Bayern are interested. So I think it's going to be a big race in the summer transfer window if Gahey decides to move only in June. But as of now, City are still trying to make it happen in January. So next days will be busy.
All right, plenty to unpack there. Let's switch from defence to the attacking end. And there's been a lot of noise suggesting Vinicius Jr. could be on his way to Chelsea. Is there anything in these reports, and is the Brazilian open to a move to the Premier League?
No, I'm told that there is absolutely nothing into it. No talks, no conversations, no interest. Obviously, Chelsea can only appreciate Vinicius as a super player, but they are not working on a deal to sign Vinicius. Also, there is no chance for Vinicius to leave Real Madrid in January, from what I heard. So the situation at the moment is completely quiet. Also, Real Madrid are not aware of any bid coming from Chelsea. So there is really nothing into it. I don't know where this is coming from, but according to my information on both sides of clubs and also on player side, there is absolutely nothing. And I don't think this is a likely deal to happen anytime soon.
Sure, let's stick with Chelsea. And Chelsea have obviously confirmed a new manager in Liam Rosenior. As their new manager, do you expect them to back him in this winter market?
Yes, of course. I also think that Chelsea's structure is very clear. It's Chelsea with their management and with people at the club deciding on the players, and then obviously involving the manager in the conversation, but it's not the manager who decides the players to sign. This is the Chelsea model. And so he's absolutely ready to follow this way and to be all together in this project and strategy. At the moment, Chelsea are very happy with the squad they have. So, or they have the opportunity on the market to add someone who can really make the difference. For example, they made a call for Antoine Semenyo a few weeks ago to understand the conditions on the deal, and then they left the conversation because they were not convinced about the numbers of the deal, and they also felt that the player wanted to go somewhere else. But if there is a good opportunity to add an important player, Chelsea can be ready. Otherwise, they are not desperate at this moment. They are quite happy with the squad they have. So let's see what the market will bring to them. But at the moment, they are not desperate, and I'm told that also Rosenior is quite happy with the squad he has. So it's a really calm situation at the moment.
Interesting, and that leads us nicely to a player attracting a lot of interest. Elliot Anderson is being looked at by Chelsea, Manchester United and Manchester City ahead of the summer. Is there any early front runner in this race?
Not yet, still too early, also because, as you say, it is going to be a summer move, so it's still early to mention a front runner. For sure, I can tell you that he's very high on the list of Manchester United, together with Carlos Baleba. There are 2-3 players that Man United are tracking. I think they will be busy with midfielders in 2026, and Anderson is one of them for sure. So I'm sure United will be in the conversation. Then there is going to be plenty of clubs keen on him. Also the ones you mentioned, Man City are also going to look for midfielders. Let's see what happens at Chelsea. So I think it's going to be a big battle, but at the moment, what I can say is that Man United for sure have mentioned his name several times internally, and so I expect them to be serious contenders at the table.
Sure, let's bring the focus purely to Manchester United for a second. Following Ruben Amorim's exit, do you expect Manchester United to make any signings this January?
Look, it depends on also in this case on the opportunities. Also for United is similar to Man City. If they have the chance to bring someone who can make the difference, like it was Antoine Semenyo, also United tried. So if there is this kind of chance, Man United can be ready. Otherwise, also in this case, they are not desperate. Also, there are many clubs pushing to get their players. Napoli wanted Kobbie Mainoo on loan, but now with Amorim leaving, I think at the end he's likely to stay at the club. Rome are still pushing for Joshua Zirkzee. They are still there. They are still calling. So let's see what happens with the exits. But at the moment, for Man United, still nothing imminent. Of course, now we wait for the new manager, and in the moment we will understand what's likely to do in the January window.
Okay, that really sets the scene. So let's look at what's next. Who are the early contenders to replace Ruben Amorim on a permanent basis?
Yeah, at the moment, the plan is to go for a caretaker manager till the end of the season with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as clear favorite, and then to see closer to the summer what the market can bring in terms of managers. Because there is a World Cup, so there are some managers already appreciated internally since Man United in 2024 considered the opportunity to part ways with Ten Hag, and then they won the FA Cup against City and they changed it all. But for example, Thomas Tuchel, Roberto De Zerbi, these managers were appreciated at that time, and I'm sure are still appreciated. But I'm also sure there will be plenty of names in the short list, because again, there is the World Cup. There are many managers who can be available after the World Cup. There are many talented managers around Europe. For sure, Man United want Premier League experience. That's something I can guarantee. They already discussed some names internally, but this process is going to take time. It's not going to be decided now. They want to understand what kind of opportunities there will be. And so I think that Zerbi and Tuchel will be part of the conversation, but you can imagine being that Zerbi busy with Marseille and Tuchel super busy with England. At this point, there is nothing that can be decided or agreed now.
Sure, and talking about the short term, what's going to happen next? Obviously, two names you mentioned there in Solskjaer and Carrick. Is there any chance that they could work together and come in together?
Yeah, let's see. It could be a possibility. At the moment, it's still under discussion because Man United met both of them in the recent hours. Solskjaer is very ready to make this happen because he's really keen on the opportunity to return to Manchester United. With Carrick, it was also a positive meeting. Now it's on the club to decide what kind of structure they want to build around the caretaker manager. But I'm sure this is going to be quite a quick process. So I expect in the next 2-3 days, Man United to sort everything. Solskjaer is ready, very ready to accept any moment. So I don't think this is going to be a long process. I think in the next days everything will be clear, and I maintain Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as the clear favorite.
Okay, some really interesting possibilities there. Lastly, let's head to North London. Spurs are keen to back Thomas Frank. Is signing an attacker their #1 priority, and who is on their shortlist right now?
Yeah, at the moment, still nothing imminent on this one. I think Tottenham will try to understand if there is some market opportunity as it was 1 year ago with Matis Tel, for example. Tel was not on the market at the beginning of January, and then at the end of the market, the opportunity arrived, and Tottenham were quick to make it happen, similar to Randall Colomwani in the summer. So I think they will follow this kind of model. If there is the right opportunity, they are ready to jump on it and add one attacker to the squad. At the moment, still nothing advanced, so I don't want to throw names just to make the fans excited. I think in the next days it's going to be more clear. There is also the story of Fabio Paratici, who is going to Fiorentina in the near future, and this is also impacting sometimes the timing of the market for Tottenham, but for sure they will be active.
And lastly, just staying with Spurs, what about the young Santos left-back Sousa? How likely is that move to Tottenham?
It's a possibility. There are talks ongoing with the agents of the player. I'm told that the player is keen on the move. There was interest also from Italian clubs and Spanish clubs calling his agents, but now Tottenham are on it. Tottenham are negotiating with the player and also club to club with Santos. So that's a possibility. There is a conversation ongoing. Let's see about the price, because Tottenham don't want to overpay. They want to make sure the deal makes sense for them on the financial point of view. It already makes sense on the technical point of view. Sousa is a talented left back. So they are following and tracking the situation, talking to the agents. Let's see club to club what's going to happen, but on player side is going quite well.
Fabrizio, brilliant as always. Really appreciate your time, and speak soon.
Thank you, my friend. See you soon.
Liv, muted to begin the year. There's always one per show.
There's always one. I was hoping it was going to be Joel and not me. Oh gosh. Okay, we go. And before we on to our next guest, I did say we were going to talk about Manchester United, and we're going to do that. But before we do that, we're just going to get in Ben's question, just so you've got time before the end of the show to get thinking about it, Ben. So the question is today, Will Wolves' Jurgen Strand Larsen stay at Wolves? Or is he going to go? Obviously, he was close to leaving in the summer, wasn't he? If you want to hear the answer to that question, then make sure you stick around until the end of the show. But let's get into Manchester United, shall we? Because, I mean, January transfer windows are always full of twists, I suppose. But I'm not sure it's ever started, Ben, with two managers of former Premier League former Premier League winners getting sacked. I mean, Enzo Maresca, I sort of maybe saw coming a little bit. And after Ruben Amorim's comments, I was like, oh gosh, where are we going here? Anyway, they both got sacked. That's before you even throw in Celtic as well. Wilfred Nancy got sacked as well. But joining us now to bring us the latest on what on earth is happening at Old Trafford, we are joined now by Jamie Jackson, the Guardian's United correspondent. I feels like I should ask you, Jamie, about the sort of post-Amorim era because of Burnley last night. But first of all, I just want to get you to talk us through the day that Ruben Amorim got sacked, because were you surprised it was coming after his comments in that bizarre press conference he gave?
No, not really. Because, I mean, it kind of was initiated on the Friday press conference when I gave him a bit of a grilling about comments he'd made previously on Christmas Eve, saying he was now starting to realise that actually he wasn't going to get the finance, in essence, for the sort of big players, the top players he needed to play sort of this, this now infamous 3-4-3. And my ears pricked up because I was thinking, why is he saying that sort of over a year into the job? Was he not told this? I stored it up, this quote. And yeah, fast forward to last Friday, I asked him about it, and a couple of times he batted it away. The third time he batted it away, and then as the sort of media officer at Manchester United, George, moved it on, he just sort of said 4 words, you are very smart. And it was a sort of confirmation, because in the sort of final part of my question, I'd mentioned, has there been a change in budget, and or has Jason Wilcox, who's obviously the director of football at United, spoken to you? And that's when he said that. And that kind of set the whole thing in motion. So you fast forward to Sunday, and I wasn't surprised to, I wasn't at Elland Road, I was at the City game. I wasn't surprised when those comments started to come through. And as I was driving away from the City game, it was against Chelsea, I got wind, I did a story basically saying that his future in the balance, sort of Sunday evening, he could go. I mean, as I understand it, they made a decision actually on Sunday night. So yeah, fast forward again to Monday morning. I wasn't surprised. I am surprised by how quickly it moved. You walk into Carrington on the Friday for that press conference, you walk out of there thinking, he could be toast. And it's interesting. Listen, I happen to be the one asking the questions, but I think if someone else had prodded him the right way, it would have happened. You know what I'm getting at? Because he walked into that press conference with a face of thunder. And I actually got told, after they got knocked out, Manchester United, to Grimsby, the Carabao Cup, if you remember, that was sort of late August, I got told in the first post Grimsby defeat press conference at Carrington, he purposely put a sort of breezy face on and walked in to see us all, sort of try to say business as usual. I just wonder, actually I don't wonder, I'm pretty sure he came in on Friday having had this bust up with Wilcox. Obviously he was cheesed off, don't get me wrong, but he was part of a sort of, right, I'm going to try and get the message out there. And it is interesting that he batted away the first 2 of my attempts. It was just when I mentioned finance, probably the 2 words Jason Wilcox, he couldn't resist anymore. I mean, as you mentioned, I was at the Burnley game last night, and it was really actually quite weird. I know they played a sort of 4-2-3-1 against Newcastle. It was actually quite weird to see the old United formation with, Bruno Fernandes as a single 10. Something which, we're all so familiar with until Ruben. It's almost sort of like this Amorim thing has been a little bit of some sort of weird dream we've all been involved in, thinking, is this going to work? Are we going to wake up? And we sort of finally have. I mean, I really like the guy and all the rest of it, but I do think he was naive. I mean, some of the stuff, as we're discussing, was premeditated, he would say, and other stuff, I just think he couldn't help himself. So yeah, I'd be interested to see where United go from here in terms of form. The Ollie bounce, I obviously covered them when he came in last time. I wrote a biography of Solskjaer, actually. I got commissioned on the basis of his first interim spell, which I think he won 14 out of the 19, maybe lost 2 or 3, culminating in the PSG game away, part of the Prans, when Rashford scored a hat-trick. So I got commissioned to this biography with Simon Schuster, and then he signs the permanent deal. The form nosedives, And suddenly, you know what it's like on social media. Suddenly, somehow it's my fault because I'm writing a biography of Solskjaer. I was getting so much, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that sort of thing? So anyway, I'm back in that sort of deja vu all over again world.
Jamie, on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer then, because it looks like that's going to be the move that they go interim wise. I've spoken to a couple of United fans and they seem really positive and really excited about him coming back in. Is that sort of the feeling that you're getting amongst United fans, that they're welcoming Ole back in and are actually really excited for this?
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to get people who disagree, but I think Solskjaer forever, until he gets back into the job, he can't do any wrong. So what I'm saying is, towards the end of the last time, or actually through a lot of the sort of his permanent tenure, from sort of March 2019, there were ups and downs on the field, so with the fans. But he scored the winning goal that sealed not only the Champions League but the treble in 1999. If you're a Manchester United fan, I think someone characterised it well to me the other day, who's a fan, said, whenever I hear the words Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I feel warm. That's basically the magic of football, the magic of being a fan of a particular club, and players doing, that was a storybook story, the Champions League final, not just for United, but particularly for Solskjaer, who obviously came on as a sub. He was really, really sort of desperate to get on, didn't think he was going to get on at first. I think Sheringham went on before him, all the rest of it. So he can do no wrong. And actually, they've got the right hero there, because obviously I know him a little bit through writing about him and covering him. He's a really, really beautiful guy with a really sort of beautiful heart, but also he has got quite a sort of, not a hard edge, but a sort of, he can be a little bit, as you have to be, quite professional. So yeah, listen, they lose the first two, it'll be public enemy number one to a certain constituency of United fans. That's football. He'll know that, and I think the fact he wants to go back in there. I was just watching his exit interview when he got sacked last time after that Watford game when I was watching it yesterday, because I was just writing about him. And I think his final words were something like, we'll see you again. We'll see each other again. And here we are. He is about to see them all again, the sort of fans. And I think his first game might be the derby, right? That's at home, isn't it? Old Trafford. Can you imagine that? I mean, could you actually make that up?
Absolutely crazy. Jamie, the big thing, though, is obviously the fact that you got called smart. So forgetting everything else, you might call Ruben Amorim naive. You might be detrimental towards his tenure, but he ended it calling you smart.
Well, he was to be fair, it was very smart, but I think he undersold me. It should have been, you were a genius. So I'm not particularly happy. I have to be honest. My friends are furious with him because they know I will never let them live this down. I'm just going to be hammering them with it for the rest of their lives.
It can go into your bio. That said, he walks in, he calls you smart. He's out of a job within a matter of hours. So maybe the opinion isn't as smart as we might think.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm really interested in one thing, which is, it is easy, isn't it, in the heat and emotion of football to make this about Amorim, to speak about the system, to talk about Bruno Fernandes in a deeper role, to bring up a player like Kobbie Mainoo who wasn't getting any minutes, and add all that together and sort of say there were loads of football reasons why this didn't work. But I think Manchester United fans will be looking at it and they'll see a much bigger picture, which is Ineos come in, a lot of hype, a lot of money spent. There was certainly backing for Amorim. And in the space of his tenure and the bit before, there was a U-turn on Erik ten Hag's future. There was a U-turn on Dan Ashworth. We still don't really know what the true working relationship is between Ineos and the Glazers. So as long as that infrastructure remains and the decision-making isn't consistent, does any Manchester United manager really stand a chance?
Very, very good question. It's basically kind of the piece that I wrote for The Guardian today. I mean, I actually started off the sort of piece by saying it appears, this sort of zooming in or targeting of Solskjaer, the latest sort of iffy decision from Berardi and Wilcox. And actually, I sort of then went on to write that if they don't get this one right, if it doesn't work, Ratcliffe, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, with those three examples you've just mentioned, I basically sort of described him as being made to look like a chump because of those three things, which those two gentlemen fingerprints are all over, either fully or partly. So if this doesn't work, will he start to look at Berardi, who obviously, hired Wilcox because of the City connection, and/or Wilcox, and say, well, wait a minute, what decisions are actually going right here? Why am I paying these gentlemen, pretty lucrative sums if they're not actually doing the job that they're being paid for. And you are correct. I mean, in a funny sort of way, even though the manager, well, the player's the most important, of course, but then it's the manager or head coach. But actually, if you think about it, you could make a case for saying whoever is employing the person who signs the players and or the head coach is the most important, because if they get that wrong, then the whole thing falls down. That's basically been the problem with United since Ferguson left. Ferguson was everything. He was the manager, the director of football, the chief scout, you know, the sort of team psychologist. You know, I could go on and on. He was a one-man sort of, you know, genius, basically, like a sort of Swiss Army knife of, you know, different roles. And since then, they've got it wrong each time, you know. And you look at the recruitment. Well, if Jason Wilcox is in charge, you know, of recruitment, and you know, Amorim comes in and Ashworth leaves because he doesn't fancy Amorim, and the players, you know, the players aren't great and all the rest of it, then it really is on the director of football. I mean, it's interesting. If you go across town to City, we'll all know this. Obviously, you know, it kind of supports what I'm trying to say. Guardiola has a director of football. It was Begarenstein, obviously, for years, a very good one. But they were all there. They are all there, you know, for Guardiola. That's why Pellegrini came in after Mancini left, because they were waiting for Guardiola to, you know, leave Bayern Munich. But they had this whole thing going on with Soriano, Begarenstein, you know, who are obviously at Barcelona. It's all set up for him now. You know, it's a chicken egg thing. That's because he's a genius, and they knew that. And it's difficult to identify the next one. I get that. That's why people are geniuses, because you know, they're very rare. But yeah, so if you don't have that person as a head coach, then the rest of it has to really, really work. And yeah, I don't know. I still think they could be doing a lot better even without a genius manager. And so that goes back to what you're saying, Ben, the sort of structure. So will Ratcliffe, I don't know, will Ratcliffe, if it doesn't work, I mean, they're in a Champions League place on points. I know they're, you know, it's a goal difference thing. They're in 6th at the moment. They're very close. If they end up, let's say, 10th, don't win the FA Cup, which is the only competition they can win, you know, left in. I don't know how will Ratcliffe view that? I would suggest if he's got anything about him, and he actually cares about United, actually, 'cause that's what we're talking about here. Manchester United, you know, doing well. You know, will he actually take a hard look at those two gentlemen, because it is on their heads?
Final one from me, a serious question, and then I know Liv's got a surprise, unserious question for you to finish. But looking ahead is difficult because it looks like they're going to go caretaker first, but we know that in the summer there'll be a new permanent manager. I think you and others have reported that if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was to be the caretaker, he would at least have a glimmer of hope of kind of earning it on a permanent basis. But there's other names, aren't there, Jamie, in the original process before Ruben Amorim: Enzo Maresca, Kieran McKenna, Maurizio Pochettino. Now there's appreciation for the likes of Roberto De Zerbi and Thomas Tuchel. And both of them are obviously not going to be available mid-season. And Tuchel, if he leaves England when his contract expires, not until after the World Cup. So it feels like they don't have a short list. They've got a long list. Are you hearing from some of those names any particular early contenders?
Well, I've heard a little bit about Tuchel, but I checked this out yesterday, and it was sort of like, I won't say dampened down, but it was almost sort of, where's that coming from? I mean, the guy who interests me, you didn't mention there, is Emery. I mean, you know, I know he sort of went to Arsenal, it wasn't great, but I just look at him and think, you know, could he go in there? But again, we get back to this structure thing, Ben. So any of those names, De Zerbi, you know, he seems to really, I've heard you know, the United really like him, but would he sort of work under that structure? Now, this goes back to the chicken egg thing. And again, you have to be really, really smart here. You might look at it if you De Zerbi or whoever else and think, right, okay, I'm not going to have as much power as I like, but if I start to win and actually give them what they want, what the fans want, and, you know, start to progress the club properly, maybe through time you organically or sort of naturally just gain more power, because suddenly Wilcox thinks, okay, I'm not going to argue with this guy, a bit like Guardiola at City. You understand what I mean? So that's why you need someone with sort of special kind of ingredients who maybe is sort of strategic and forensic, is thinking that way, but also able to pull it off. But I mean, yeah, I've heard quite strongly on De Zerbi, but the one who if I was Wilcox, which I'm not, I would be looking, I would be looking at Emery, because I don't know what you two think, but for all the reasons that are obvious, etc., I just think he might be worth a go. Listen, at that club, the joke we always have as journalists is the only people who survive that club are the journalists, right? The players, and the coaches come and go. The executives do, right? But we're still somehow here standing. I mean, might walk out the door in a minute and no longer be here. But you know what I'm getting at. So whoever it is like, it's a bit of a banana republic, isn't it? Really, Manchester United, in terms of the Byzantine politics. But yeah, Emery is the one who'd interest me. But I am hearing De Zerbi's quite. But I'm sure that given the beauty parade you just mentioned there before the FA Cup final 2024, I'm sure. Tuchel came very close, didn't he? They went to Monaco and all the rest of it. And but yeah, I'm hearing that might not be. Part of the problem is what you mentioned there, because of the World Cup. If England do anything half okay there, when would he come in? It's going to be a truncated close season, isn't it? So, it's all to play for. Just going back to Solskjaer. If he does really well, gets a Champions League berth and wins the FA Cup, big ifs. How can they not give it to him? But then you're into this situation, right? Then you're into this situation whereby, will it be like last time where it's up and down and suddenly you think, oh, why have we done that? So this is another reason why I don't think it's a wise choice, because it's not just about the interim thing. It's if they almost feel forced to give it to him, and then history doesn't always have to repeat itself. But we did have 2.5 years, whatever, of his football, and he will have learned lessons about the rest of it. But I'm not so sure.
Jamie, just finally, my last question is: there is a multicolored, colourful book behind you. Can you just
yes.
can you just explain what that is? There's a lot of copies there.
Yeah, that's my latest novel, Adventures in Love. It's a teenage romance. Two 17-year-olds fall in love in Lancaster about 1990. They find out who's flooding the area with, let's say, the dancing tablets. They pilfer a few of these, and the plan is to sell them. The plan is to sell them at the last ever warehouse party and sort of run away together to Ibiza to live forever in paradise on the winnings. But other people are after them, so yes.
Oh, that's great, Jamie.
A man of many talents. He's not just
man of many talents. Yeah.
Where
Jamie,
can people get
so
it, by the way, Jamie? Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon or Waterstones or everywhere really. But yeah, Amazon's probably the best.
And which book's better, the Solskjaer bio or Adventures in Love?
Oh, I'm going to be honest here. Fiction is my love. Listen, the biography is obviously an amazing piece of work, but it's not like, I get to make stuff up with fiction. It's my true love, writing.
I should have asked which one was cheaper, because that's the one I'm going to buy.
It's Adventures in Love.
There we go. Jamie, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you so much. Oh, so much going on at Manchester United. Right, before we move on, I think we've got some breaking news.
Yes, we do. I was waiting for the stab.
Yeah, so was I. Was there no
come unless Joel Bears
New Year, no stab, no.
There it is. You've got to click the fingers,
Magic.
Otherwise it doesn't come. We're in control of it, but you've got to click the fingers. So this is just a quick one relating to Manchester United. We spoke about the caretaker vacancy, and at the moment, the Manchester United plan is clear that Darren Fletcher will manage against Brighton in the FA Cup, and then Manchester United will hope to appoint a caretaker. They won't do that without face-to-face interviews. And there's two candidates, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who everybody's speaking about, and yes, he is one of the front runners, but don't discount Michael Carrick. And the bit of extra news that I can bring you on that is if it was Solskjaer that gets the job, I'm told Michael Carrick, who was part of Solskjaer's team when he was permanent manager of Manchester United, would also be willing to come in as a number 2. So this might not just be a case of Ollie or Carrick. It could be a case of both of them working together in some capacity until the end of the season. So keep an eye in the next kind of 48 hours. First step, face-to-face interviews with both Ollie and Carrick. Solskjaer is already in advanced talks regarding terms and things like that. It'll be structured in quite a low wage, I'm told, but then with a big bonus if he qualifies for the Champions League, and the same for Carrick as well. But once again, it's not only either or. Of course, it could be that scenario, especially if Carrick has other opportunities or Solskjaer, because they're both in demand. West Ham and Carrick could develop if Nuno goes. But if they're both free agents and interested, there's also a way potentially it might be Solskjaer with Carrick as his number 2.
Ooh, very exciting for Manchester United fans. Well, it's not just, well, I say it's not just Man United that are looking for a new manager. It is, because Chelsea's is now confirmed. But obviously they won the prize for first managerial sacking. Was it a sacking? Did he walk? Was it mutual?
Yeah,
I don't
all
know.
sides say
I don't
differently.
know.
The Maresca
Yeah.
side are adamant that he walked away, and of course Chelsea say by mutual consent.
Yeah. Well, anyway, regardless, Enzo Maresca left the club at the beginning of 2026. On New Year's Day, he announced that he was going. Now, Liam Rosenior, over the last couple of days, has been announced as the new Chelsea manager. His dad is the former Fulham, QPR, West Ham and Bristol City striker Leroy Rosenior, who is now a respected TV pundit, and he joined us just before today's show. Very, very exciting. Leroy, thank you so much for doing this. The first thing, Leroy, I've obviously worked with you for years, and I think I've been saying your name wrong all this time. And this is the biggest question that is now on everyone's lips, I think, because of obviously Liam joining Chelsea and now being the new Chelsea manager. Please, can you just for once and finally tell everyone how you pronounce your surname, please, Leroy?
Thank you, Olivia. My surname is pronounced Rosenior, and the reason why, I think Liam spoke to Martin Tyler last night before the game. And he said, "Look, just go with what everybody's comfortable with," and I think that's absolutely right. Because when I started playing, people thought, "Oh, how do you pronounce that? And how do you spell that?" And I go, R-O Senior. So then people started to say, "Oh, it's Rosenior," and I was over 40 years ago, by the way. So for 40 years, people have been getting it wrong. I even had an argument with a fan once. He said, "Oh, your name's Rosenior." I went, no, it's Rosenior. He went, "No, it's Rosenior. It means it's French. It's Black Rose." I went, "Well, it is my name, and it is Rosenior, and it's actually Dutch. And our full family name is De Graft Rosenior, which we don't use the De Graft. Otherwise, that would just totally confuse people. So the correct pronunciation is Rosenior, but we're quite happy because it's been going on for 40 years, and whatever, we'll go with it.
Well, I'm doing Chelsea's next Champions League game, Leroy. So I'll have a sit down with Liam, and I will be calling him Liam Rosenior. There is no way I'm calling him Liam Rosenior, but I'm very much looking forward to that.
Cool.
Let's just talk about Liam then and his journey to getting him where he is today, which is now currently the Chelsea manager. Because I think obviously a lot of people will know him from Strasbourg, which is where Chelsea have got him from. But actually, he has had a career managing in the EFL, hasn't he? Tell us a little bit about his journey to getting to Strasbourg.
Well, the journey started when he was born. In all honesty, Liv, because he's just been around football all his life, and he's just absolutely loved the game. I was telling someone the other day when I was at Fulham and at West Ham, especially at West Ham under John Lyle, they used to allow the kids to warm up with the players. So we had our dressing room, an area where the kids and the players would warm up, and then the family room, because John Lyle was big on family. So Liam was always around it, and especially that was at Upton Park, obviously, which we no longer have. So he's been around football a very long time, and he used to listen in to my mentor, a guy called Derry Quigley, and my best mate Paul Mortimer, who we used to talk football all the time, and Liam would be just listening in, and he just really taking an interest from a very young age. So his journey's been a long journey. But in terms of his playing career, when he was playing, I honestly think he was more interested in coaching than playing. I think he wanted to be a coach / manager more than he wanted to be a player. I think he's always kind of had the one eye on the coaching side of things. And he started at Brighton when he came out of the game, and I think he took the under-21 job and then started doing some punditry with Sky, which is always a good way to learn to communicate. He's a good communicator, but when you're trying to explain things, going into the media, as you know, Olivia, is really important that you get your message across. And when I watched him, I was amazed at how good he was at that. But in the back of his mind, he was looking for an opportunity. So he went to Derby under Philip Cocu. Was coaching there, and then the opportunity came for him to link up with Wayne, and Wayne became the manager. And I've heard Wayne talking about it, and Wayne had never coached before. And by the way, they are very, very close. They get on really well. And Wayne just allowed Liam to really do all of the coaching. And it was with a very, very, very young side. They brought loads of players in from the youth team because of the financial situation there. So he was dealing with very, very young players. Eventually, I think Wayne moved on when they got relegated after the big points deduction, and Liam took it on. I think it was 3 weeks before the start of the season. I think they had 3 or 4 players at Derby, and he brought together a squad in 3 or 4 weeks, and got them competitive. I think they were 6th, but was moved on because the chairman thought he was inexperienced in that division. Fine. And then he got the whole job. And he had a really strong relation. I think he still has a really strong relationship with Ashton, who's the chairman there. He's a real character, Ashton. And by the way, Liam really likes him. I think they still really like each other. I think they were in a relegation zone, finished 15th that season, and then finished 7th the next season. But Ashton, they had a difference of opinion or whatever, and Liam moved on. But they highly respect each other. And then the opportunity came for him to go to Strasbourg, and he grabbed it, and he has had a wonderful 18 months there. Can you imagine going to not into a club in France, but going to a club that's managed by an absolute legend in Patrick Vieira in France, and you're a young Englishman who no one knows, and so it was tough, but he absolutely loved it. And you know what? I think they love him as well. He was really emotional when he left there, because he made some really good connections, which will I think will be with him for the rest of his life. And then obviously he's got this opportunity. So look, it's been a journey. It's been an interesting journey, and hopefully there's still a long way to go on that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you talk about that they loved him, I've seen a lot of the players come out, and even Ben Chilwell, I think, is a good example of just saying, he's absolutely loved working with him. And I think, I was listening to the radio the other day, and there was a lot of, they had Strasbourg fans on there that would say they really didn't want him to leave either. Obviously, this is a big step up. Me being a Chelsea fan, Leroy, I know what it's like to have a million different managers at my football club. And the pressures are different, aren't they, when you're managing a club, especially like Chelsea. And listen, I'm sure Liam is absolutely ready for that and can't wait for this journey to start.
Yeah, and I think you've got to be aware that, look, this is one of the biggest clubs in the world. And let's not kid ourselves. The pressures are going to be something that he's never experienced before. But I would say that'll be the same for every manager that's gone into Chelsea, even Jose Mourinho. And so, and we don't know how he's going to react. I've known him a long time, and honestly, I think he'll be absolutely fine. I think he'll be himself. I think he will stay true to his values, and he'll stay in course. I think that's key when you're a manager of anywhere, that you're just true to who you are and what you believe in. And the most important thing is you care about the people around you, whether that be players, coaches, supporters, board members. You want to bring them all together. And I think Liam is great, is really good at that. And so I think the same principles apply, maybe tenfold, let's be honest, but the same principles apply. And when you're under pressure, I think you always have to go back to your core values. And I think Liam is very good at doing that.
Leroy, what was going through your mind seeing him arrive at Craven Cottage? And of course, you're a former Fulham player, so 50% of you is probably celebrating Fulham's victory over Chelsea, and 50% was probably thinking, I hope Chelsea get a win, so there's a bit of momentum before his first game in charge against Charlton.
Let's put you straight, Ben. No percent of me was celebrating a win for Fulham last night. Okay, even though Fulham is my club, but family always come first, and that is key. Fulham is a club that's very close to my heart, and very close to Liam's heart as well. And so it's funny how football throws these things up. But no, I'm a Chelsea fan now, then through and through. And so, but even though Fulham is a club that's close to my heart, I will be backing Liam 100%.
And if we talk a little bit about his personality and his managerial style, give us an overview, because I think in multi-club groups, if you think Red Bull or now Blueco, sometimes all managers get very generic stereotypes. So people will assume that his style is the same as Enzo Maresca, that he's part of course, the Blueco philosophy, but there will be individual elements. And he said when he spoke to Chelsea that his style was front foot and aggressive and ultimately winning. So what makes him unique in terms of both his managerial style and also his personality?
Well, firstly, in terms of managerial style, he is very, very, very front foot. The thing when he went to Strasbourg, it allowed him to coach, because it was 34 games in a season. You know, in the Championship, obviously 46, the Premier League 38, but it was 34 games, and it allowed him to try things out. So he's had so many ideas. He's extremely flexible, tactically very, very aware. He's very front foot, and what you'll find is that he's quite aggressive. And a lot of people think he's quite mild-mannered, but he's quite an aggressive coach as well. And and I think the key is, and as professionals, you always have to win. And no matter whether it's Hull, Derby, Strasbourg, Chelsea, doesn't matter, whatever level of football, you have to win. And he's very, very aware of that.
First Champions League game managing, which is very exciting. It's against Paphos at home. Now he's managing, I mean, he did so well with Strasbourg in the Conference League. They were absolutely flying in that competition. And this team obviously have played in the Conference League, have won that, but now it's up in the Champions League as well. Do you think that it will be a seamless transition into that competition, and how do you think he'll fare in the biggest competition of them all?
Yeah, I think that was a really vital experience for him in the Conference League this year, because the volume of games, the travelling, the different environments you have to deal with, I think is a totally invaluable experience. So yeah, I think that will stand him in good stead. And one thing, he absolutely really did look forward to it. I had loads of people, you know, when people go into Europe, say, "Oh, look, it's going to be a problem playing Thursday, Sunday," and oh my word, I don't think Liam thinks like that. He just sees it as something that is really valuable, and obviously it is massive for Chelsea, the Champions League. So I just think he'll embrace it.
Just a final one from me, Leroy, away from Chelsea and Lyon. You, of course, as you alluded to, played for Fulham, one of your clubs, but you're also a striker for West Ham United as well. Now you're a Chelsea fan, so
yeah,
I'm
afraid so. I don't thought I'd say that.
But if we just come back to the Hammers, a lot of change this January. A couple of new attackers have come in. It looks like Callum Wilson's going to leave. They lost, though, to Nottingham Forest, and they're struggling, aren't they, to stay in the Premier League? What hope do you have that West Ham can somehow get themselves out of trouble?
Yeah, it breaks my heart to see where West Ham are at the moment. And you were talking about Europe. It only seems like yesterday where David Moyes was lifting that Conference League title, and then I think a lot of people said it, be careful what you wish for. You know, that David Moyes has now gone to Everton doing a fantastic job because he's a fantastic manager. And since then, there's been a turnover of managers, a turnover of players. And when you get different managers wanting different players, playing a different way, having different ideas, I think this is almost was inevitable that they'd have this dip in form. Didn't think it would last so long. When Nuno came in, I think, was it 16 games ago, is it now? Since Nuno's coming, not sure. But when Nuno came, I thought, yeah, good appointment. They'll settle things down. They get some consistency in their performances, which they haven't managed to get. And to be honest, their performance against Forest was okay. You know, it wasn't too bad, but the decisions just went against you. And when you get in that sort of situation, those are the sorts of things that seem to happen. So look, they're in a very difficult situation. Let's be honest. West Ham fans are not in a good place. I don't think they're even angry. I watched the game, and the no people in the stands, and I mean, and that's even more dangerous because at least there's emotion. When you're angry, it's a big emotion, and you can feed off your anger. But when there's apathy, it's almost like a resignation, and that's got to change very, very good, very quickly. They've got to get the atmosphere out, which is difficult. Let's be honest. I've been to that stage, and we've all been to that stage, and it's difficult. When West Ham are playing well in that stage, brilliant. But when they're not, it's tough because it's difficult for the fans to connect with the players. So they're in a difficult situation, and let's hope they can turn it around.
Leroy, thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. I can't believe we're sat here and Leroy's a Chelsea fan. This is great.
Yeah, well, don't keep saying it, Nick. Don't keep saying it.
Oh, Leroy, I'm going to remind everyone. I'm going to remind you that you're a Chelsea fan. And listen, we wish Liam the best of luck. And really looking forward to seeing him in the dugout for the game against Charlton on the weekend.
Thanks very much. Cheers, guys.
Oh, that was great from Leroy, wasn't it?
You converted him. Well, technically Liam converted him.
I'm not quite sure how much say I've had in this, to be perfectly honest, but it is great that Leroy is now a Chelsea fan. And I think that was, if any Chelsea fans are watching, listening, you get a little bit more of an insight into what Liam's like and maybe what you can expect to see from him as the Chelsea manager. It's very, very exciting. Let's stick with the Chelsea theme then, because Kieran Gill is the Daily Mail's Chelsea correspondent, and he's with us now. Kieran, welcome along. Hello. It is perfect chaos at the club that you cover. It's perfect chaos at my club. When Enzo Maresca made those comments after the Everton game, did you think that a couple of weeks later he would be gone?
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, I apologise if I look a bit dishevelled. I mean, I would have liked to have shaved, but you just don't get any time when you're covering Chelsea. It's just like you said. True. It's just complete chaos. I mean, I liked Maresca, but those worst 48 hours comments were obviously the beginning of the end. And obviously, we 2 weeks later with the Bournemouth situation where he refused to come and speak to us, it was all a bit fishy. And obviously, Ben, you broke the news that the illness was fake, the excuse we were given. I mean, he sent out Willie Caballero to come and speak to us. And if Willie ever fancies leaving football, he could follow Vinnie Jones to Hollywood, I reckon, because he was just telling, he's had such a high temperature for the last 2 days. It was, it was all a fib. He just didn't want to come and speak to us. But I quite liked Enzo Maresca. When you're covering these guys as close as we do around the club, going around well with them, speak to them 4 times a week, spent 31 days in America covering the Club World Cup. You get to know them. You get a relationship between the manager and journos. So I ended up quite liking him, but he obviously kind of used us to get some sort of messaging out there, which is fine. Bring back cryptic press conferences. I'm all for that. And in the end, it just all fell apart. I do think that last game against Bournemouth, when the fans booed him substituting Cole Palmer, I do think that played a big part. Because if you remember when he was Leicester manager, he said, if the supporters ever question my ideas, I will leave the next day. Well, it took 2 days, but he did leave. So I think that played a big part as well.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say that, because obviously, we don't know, and I don't know if we'll ever find out if, if Enzo Maresca was making those decisions, or if it was coming from advice from the medical team that were telling him that he wasn't allowed to play Cole Palmer when Chelsea are needing a goal. I'm not sure if we'll ever find out. You mentioned the fans, Kieran. Again, they made their voices very, very clear against Fulham yesterday. I was watching it on TV, and that is all I could hear was the chanting. And I feel like the chanting is aimed at Blue Co as a whole. It's not aimed at Enzo Maresca, and it wasn't aimed at Liam Rosenior either. But the fans are not happy, and I think that's an understatement. Obviously, there is a protest plan for the Brentford game as well, and it feels like, as well as the relationship between manager and owners, it's been a bit strained. The relationship with the fans and the owners getting even more strained by the day.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this in a piece I did the other day when Maresca left. I texted him at the end of last season just to say thank you for his help over the season. Getting into the Champions League, winning the Conference League, winning the Club World Cup. He'd been good for us as journalists professionally. So I sent him a message saying thank you, and he replied really thoughtfully about I'm looking forward to many more good moments over the next season. Obviously that never happened, but I do think I think he will tell his side of the story at some stage. From what I hear, that will be coming at some point, but just not yet. So maybe we'll hear more from his perspective. But last night, Liam, obviously at Craven Cottage, I was there myself. what I was quite glad to see was when Liam walked around the perimeter of the pitch to get towards the director's box, because he'd clearly been around the changing room on the other side of the stadium. I was quite glad that the Chelsea fans gave him a nice welcome. They were really kind to him as he was walking past. You know, they're not having a go at him.
Yeah.
But it was hard to escape all the chanting last night against Clearlake, against Bedard, who was sat next to Rosenior. You know, it was loud, it was blatant, it was awkward, because I've never seen, because, you know, we have those little television screens in the press box. I've never seen the cameras pan to Bedard and Liam sat together more. So, and like you say, there's the protest coming up. I'll end up going to that. There was the stage one before last season. So it'll be interesting to see how big that protest is, because clearly there's unhappiness. But I was quite glad to see last night that Liam got quite a nice welcome when he walked past the fans, because I don't think that they're not directing the anger at him.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, the optics aren't great taking the manager from Strasbourg, but I mean, you've just heard from Leroy, who's clearly such a nice guy, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Liam's, everything that he's said since he was appointed Chelsea manager has sounded wonderful. And, you know, he has to, obviously, the proof is going to be whether he can get the team playing the way he wants and winning. But we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it, Kieran? Because on the one hand, if Chelsea's owners back their project, then the continuity hire is Liam, and therefore a lot of what he's done at Strasbourg will translate quite seamlessly to Chelsea, especially mid-season. He knows the player like Andre Santos, Mike Penders, and others like Kendrick Paez, Mamadou Sarr are all going to be coming. He's already worked within the ownership group. He speaks very well. Those are all the pluses. But how do you think Liam can separate himself from just being billed as a kind of Bluco hire or Enzo Maresca 2.0? Some would say more of a yes man, and yet Leroy was saying he's very aggressive, he's extremely forthright, so he won't necessarily always toe the party line.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the optics aren't great taking a manager from Strasbourg, but I think that also shows how much Chelsea wanted him, because it would have been easier to go get someone else, you know, go pay your money for your Iraola, your Farioli, and save yourself the aggro of ticking off your sister side in France. And clearly, like you say, it helped that Liam knows a lot of people at Chelsea, including the hierarchy. At Hull, he'd spend hours working with a young analyst called Lawrence Stewart, who's now correspondent director. Brighton, he was working with Paul Winstanley. So I can see why some fans are calling it nepotism, but I think if Chelsea want to lean on those connections and they think the existing relationships can benefit them, then fair enough, that's up to them. But he clearly is a good, talented tactician, because, you know, we all know Chelsea had the youngest Premier League team in history last season. Their average age was 24 years and change. Strasbourg's was even younger. Their average age was 21 years. So they had the youngest team in all of Europe's elite leagues. So Liam's used to working with young players, improving them and increasing their transfer value as well at the same time. But I think the way, he walks in and people are calling him a yes man, but then people called Maresca a yes man, and that didn't exactly turn out well. So I think the main way he'll get to change it is by what he says through us guys, through the media, the way he carries himself in presses, because that's what fans will be listening to, I imagine. You know, his unveiling is going to be tomorrow, and I'm told it'll probably be at Cobham rather than Stamford Bridge, because he wants to stay around the training ground to get as much work done as possible. And I've also been told, you know, he's taking his first training session this afternoon. It's probably going to be a fairly long one, because he's really keen to get his ideas across as soon as possible. But I think that unveiling tomorrow will be quite interesting to see the way he carries himself, because I'm sure people like me will be asking him questions. Are you basically, you know, are you not a stooge? Sort of thing. You know, how are you going to prove yourself and separate yourself from that anger from the fans towards the ownership?
Yeah, and if we sort of think bigger picture, Kieran, outline what you think the expectations are for this season and beyond, because some Chelsea fans will feel that they constantly get told the project is for the future, the squad is young, it's going to take years. The expectations for many managers that have come in the first season have been lower. And obviously, every time you change a manager, the project can get set back. And yet, last season under Maresca, even if there were strategic mismatches, he won 2 trophies and qualified for the Champions League. And if these Chelsea owners want to sort of replicate Arsenal's building model and then have silverware at the end of it, there's going to come a point in time, isn't there, where we can't keep calling this project formative. So where do you think we're at in the project? How hampered is it by all these managerial changes? And what can we expect from Chelsea realistically this season?
Yeah, because it's hard to keep calling it a long-term project year after year. You can't just keep kicking the can down the road and 5 years later you're saying, oh, that long-term project from 5 years ago, yeah, it's still a long-term project. You need, but I mean, in the short term, they have also, whether you thought it was a bit of a FIFA vanity project, they are still world champions. They did win that. So there have been some successes. This season, from what I hear, and I presume Liam will back this up tomorrow when we speak to him, his target is Champions League football. Keep them in that competition. A couple of cup runs, that'd be nice. Staying in the Champions League because they're already in there. Try and get to the knockout stages. That'd be really good as well. But their number one priority is getting that top 4, top 5 finish and making sure they're at that top table in Europe.
Yeah, and I think that's a necessity. I given the way things went under Poch, and then under Poch qualified for the Europa League, and it was only because Man United won the FA Cup that they got demoted into the Conference League. Then Enzo Maresca obviously does what he does, and I think one of his biggest focuses needs to be on getting Cole Palmer firing again, because he is played his best football under Mauricio Pochettino, right? That's by far and away his best. Well, that's the best we've seen of him in the Chelsea shirt, and he was the best in the league, or at least close to. I know he's obviously missed a lot of games through injury, but it's trying to find a way that Cole Palmer and Estevao and Enzo can all work together. Because at the moment, I mean, watching Cole yesterday, he just looked like a shadow of himself. And there was a couple of little dummies and a couple of little flicks. But Cole Palmer is so vital if this team want Champions League football, right? If luckily, even though Chelsea are 8th, there is still a small gap between 4th and 12th, right? So 2 wins and you're sort of back up there. But getting him to be back to his best will give Chelsea the best possible chance. And do you think that's got to be one of his priorities, trying to get Cole Palmer to be back to the Cole Palmer that we know the levels he can reach? Yeah,
that's definitely in his in tray, because we know what Cole Palmer can do. I mean, it was after the Conference League final when he did that presser after he basically changed the game, and he was like, I'm sick of going sideways and backwards, so I just thought, screw it, I'm going to go for it, and he did, and he won Chelsea the game. And then the Club World Cup final as well. What he did was incredible. But it's getting that consistency out of Cole Palmer. I do think his groin injury has obviously held him back. It's still an issue. I mean, before Maresca left, he was telling us, every day is different. Some days he rocks up and he says, I feel great. And the next day he rocks up and he says, boss, I'm so stiff, I can hardly move it. So it's a lot of it is down to that injury. Obviously, they decided not to do surgery on it. They think it can heal. And the medical team are far cleverer than me. So hopefully they can. That'll be one of the questions that's asked to Liam tomorrow. How do you get Cole Palmer back to the levels that we know he can be? And he's clear. Cole Palmer as well. I think he's looking quite frustrated because while I was there last night watching him, and he was hovering towards the right wing a lot when Malagusto wasn't overlapping him, and he was sort of like whenever the ball was lost, he was sort of throwing his arms in the air. He was a bit negative. That's probably a lot of frustration at himself because he knows what he's capable of. And I I mean, Cole Palmer last night was booked for dissent, which I always think of Cole as being quite aloof. Like, he's not the type to go up to a referee and start, barking at him.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of frustration in Cole, and I think if Liam can get the best out of him, that would be massive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hopefully we can get Cole back to the Cole that we all know and love. I mean, I would desperately enjoy that. And I also think got to be really careful, because I know these players are in long contracts, so it would take a lot of money. But, if Cole Palmer in a year's time, if Chelsea is still in the same position, he wants to be going and winning Champions Leagues, because that is the sort of player he is. He deserves to be playing at the best clubs, winning the biggest trophies, because he's that good. So I think the Chelsea owners will have to be careful that they get this right sooner rather than later. Otherwise, they do risk sort of Cole Palmer going. But
yeah,
anyway,
I mean, for one, it would cost a lot of money. Chelsea would demand,
yeah.
even if he isn't playing that well at the moment or consistently, they would demand massive money, because they've gotten tied down to such a long contract. And there's no release clause in his contract, from what I'm told.
Yeah.
I know those rumours have done the rounds, but I've always been told there isn't one, so I'm going to trust what those people are saying. I can't see him going anywhere this summer. Chelsea don't want to lose. I mean, imagine the reaction from the Chelsea fans if they decided to get rid of Cole Palmer. They wouldn't be doing themselves any favours. And to be honest, Kieran, you just never know. Do you know what I mean? I would have seen weirder things happen, to be perfectly honest. And just finally, Kieran, where can everyone find your work? I work for Daily Mail. I tweet a lot.
What's your at?
Kieran Gill _DM.
There we go. There is where you can go and find Kieran. Kieran, thank you so much for joining us.
Kieran.
Bye.
See you later. Oh God, this club, eh? This club.
I mean, we could do a marathon on Chelsea and talk about nothing else. And it was New Year's Eve, by the way, as well. So I was actually out at a dinner when I got wind that he was gone. And I think several of us were the same. We were either on leave or, of course, we were about to celebrate New Year's Eve. And such is the nature of journalism. You're not going to put your phone away. And then it's like a snowball. You get one message, 2 messages, 10 messages. And I ended up working pretty much until 1 a.m., even though I was out at a venue having a dinner with friends, just to try and break that story. It was a crazy, crazy evening.
I can't even imagine. Just finally as well, I think we got a little bit more breaking news, did we, Ben?
Bits of West Ham news. Let's just start with a confirmed signing. West Ham United have signed Estelle Cascarino on loan from Juventus until the end of the season. She's a defender, 28 years of age, and had actually spent time at Manchester United in 2023. Really good signing for West Ham. Left-footed defender with strong technical ability. And then on the men's side, Callum Wilson. Keep an eye on this story, because I'm expecting it to develop in the next 24 or 48 hours. My understanding is that West Ham have now reached a verbal agreement with Callum Wilson to terminate his contract, and only small details remain in order to make that formal, and Wilson will become a free agent. Wilson, of course, joined West Ham United on a free transfer in the summer, and he has got 4 goals in 18 appearances, but starts have been few and far between. And GMS understands that Wilson's pay-as-you-play, incentive-driven deal has been a real sticking point. The more minutes he plays, the more he ends up earning, and Nuno Espirito Santo has been reluctant to utilize him. Then if you factor in Pablo Felipe and Tati Castellanos, 2 new signings for West Ham, both attackers, Wilson essentially falls down the pecking order. And Nuno actually said a few days ago that he had a very honest conversation with Wilson and basically told him something to that nature. So right now I'm expecting in the next few days, or certainly before the month is out, not that it really matters, of course, for a free agent, but Wilson's going to become a free transfer. And there's a few clubs to watch. The first is Leicester City, who, remember, had Mikel Antonio training with them, but it's believed he's picked up a muscle injury. Leicester and Callum Wilson could be one to watch, but there's also Saudi clubs as well. Al Shabab and maybe Al Ittifaq. I think Al Shabab are the more active suitor. Al Ittifaq, who Steven Gerrard used to manage, had looked at Callum Wilson in previous windows. And a lot for Saudi clubs will depend on Wilson's wage, because the new sort of mantra of the Saudi Pro League, particularly for clubs outside of the PIF control, is to try and buy younger and not put huge salaries towards players over the age of 30. But Leicester, Al Shabab, possibly Al Ittifaq, all ones to watch if, as I expect, Callum Wilson leaves West Ham and becomes a free agent.
Oh, interesting to see where Callum Wilson will go then. And then sticking with strikers, because at the start of the show, we asked Ben the question, will Wolves' Jurgen Strand Larsen stay or will he go? Ben, what's your answer?
I think he goes, and I think Wolves are willing to sell him more so than João Gomez. They're looking for £40 million or more. That was a valuation that West Ham were put off by, but keep an eye on Nottingham Forest, because Callum Wendo has gone to Frankfurt on loan. Chris Wood is out with a long-term injury. They're short of strikers at the moment. Igor Jesus, one of their summer signings, is one of them. Taiwo Awoniyi, another. But they're definitely looking for a lead striker, and Jurgen Strand Larsen could be one to watch. It was actually Hwang that got the nod to start against Everton in the 1-1 draw. Strand Larsen came off the bench and got an assist for the Matthias Mane equaliser. But he's only got one Premier League goal this season. And I think if Wolves could cash out at that £40 million number or more, they would do it. Forest, I'm told, are the most active suitor at the moment. I know we've heard reports that Tottenham could enter the race. At this stage, I can tell you there's been no contact between Spurs and the player, or Tottenham Hotspur and Wolverhampton Wanderers. That could change between now and the end of the window, but it's Nottingham Forest that seem the most adamant to make a move. And if they hit that £40 million number, I'm told Wolves will sell.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, I did think Jurgen Strand Larsen would probably go, but I suppose where is the question? Ben, thank you so much. Can't believe it's Market Madness's 1-year anniversary. It's coming to an end. How exciting.
Definitely need that budget, like I say, for the party. We'll get the powers that be to sort out those drinks and that cake by the next show.
100%. Well, that brings an end to this week's Market Madness, but do not worry. Joel Bayer will be back with more exclusive content and breaking transfer news live next Thursday for you at 11 o'clock. Until then, you can listen back on your podcast app of choice. Just search for Market Madness. For more info on any of the stories we've discussed and so much more, you can head to GiveMeSport.com. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.